Hello everyone, myself Saumya Grover, Assistant Professor, Jagannath University, Jaipur. Today we'll start with our next unit, which is chapter number 6, Introduction to News. In this chapter, we will study about hard news and soft news, its functions, elements, news values, breaking news, follow-up news, etc. Let's start with the chapter. Defining news. News is what something that we did not know before. News is something that interests people, a large number of people, even a nation or the world at large. News as information. News is essentially a package of information. It is essentially information about certain events and the persons, organizations, or processes related to the events. News as important information. Every piece of information is not news. We all live in a thick jungle of information. It is humanly impossible to be aware of everything around us. At individual level, there are certain bits of information that are of value to us. Rest is trash at any given point of time. Similarly, at group level also, every piece of information is not important and relevant. So, information has to be considered important at individual or group level to be considered as news. News is important information that gets shared. Important information confined to an individual or a small group is no news until many persons know about it. A discovery made by a scientist is only important information till it remains with the scientist or the team. If and when it becomes available to large numbers, it can be considered as news. News is important information that gets shared through media. Sharing of information with very large number of people is not possible unless some technology of dissemination is used. Radio, TV, printed paper and internet help in the dissemination of information. These devices are called media. Combining the above four ingredients, we have one definition of news. Anything that appears in the news space of various mass media is news. News is anything out of the ordinary. It is the current happening. It is anything that makes the reader surprised and curious. News is anything that will make people talk. News is the issue for discussions and debates. Any event which affects most of the people, interests most of the audiences, and involves most of the people is news. Thus, news can be called an account of the events written for the people who were unable to witness it. News is the written, audio, or visual construction of an event or happening or an incident. The news is constantly in search of action, movements, new developments, surprises, sudden reversals, ups and downs of fate and facts and follies of the mankind. There is no universal definition of news. The Oxford English Dictionary defines news as a report or account of recent events or occurrences through or coming to one as new information, new occurrence as a subject of report or talk. Charles Dana, who ran the New York Sun from 1869 to 1897, said news is anything that interests a large part of the community and has never been brought to its attention before. According to William Dreyfus, news is the timely report of events, facts, and opinions that interests a significant number of people. For him, the two key elements of news are timely and interest a significant number. A report may be timely if it lacks interest of the audience. Is it not news and vice versa? The purpose of news is to provide timely and relevant information about events, developments, and issues happening locally, nationally, and globally. News serves several important functions in society. Number one, informing the public. News outlets gather and disseminate information to keep people informed about current events and issues. This helps individuals stay updated on what is happening in their communities and the world around them, promoting transparency and accountability. News plays a crucial role in holding individuals, organizations, and governments accountable for their actions. Investigative journalism uncovers wrongdoing, corruption, and abuses of power, thereby promoting transparency and ensuring that those responsible are held accountable. Educating the public. News provides educational value by covering a wide range of topics and providing in-depth analysis. It helps people understand complex issues, offers different perspectives, and fosters critical thinking and informed decision making. Entertainment. News also serves as a form of entertainment, providing engaging stories, human interest pieces, and cultural coverage that captivate audiences and offer a break from more serious news topics. Importance of news. News plays a vital role in society by providing information, fostering democracy, promoting transparency, ensuring public safety, enhancing education, driving economic understanding, fostering social cohesion, and encouraging critical thinking. It is cornerstone of an informed and engaged community. Following are the reasons why news is important for us. Awareness and knowledge. News keeps people informed about current events, both locally and globally. It provides the public with the knowledge they need to understand and navigate the world around them. Access to news helps individuals stay updated on important developments, social issues, politics, economics, science, and more. Democracy and governance. A well-informed citizenry is essential for a functioning democracy. News plays a vital role in holding governments accountable, providing information about policies, elections, and public affairs, public safety, and emergency information. News serves as a critical source of information during emergencies, natural disasters, and crisis situations. It provides timely updates, safety instructions, evacuation notice, and alerts, helping to protect and save lives. News outlets play a vital role in disseminating vital information during such challenging times. Education and intellectual development. News offers a wealth of educational content. It covers a wide range of topics from science and technology to culture and arts, providing individuals with valuable insights and promoting intellectual development. News enhances critical thinking skills, broadens perspectives, and encourages lifelong learning. Transparency and accountability. News organizations often engage in investigative journalism, uncovering corruption, abuses of power, and exposing wrongdoing. This helps promote transparency and ensures that those in positions of authority are held accountable for their actions. News coverage can shine a light on injustice and bring about positive change. Economic impact. News provides information about financial markets, business trends, and economic indicators. It enables individuals and businesses to make informed decisions about investments, job opportunities, and financial planning. News coverage of economic issues is crucial for economic growth and stability. Functions of news. News contains much that is new. News is anything out of the ordinary. News is anything published in a newspaper which interests a large number of people. The main functions of news are: news informs people about anything unusual that takes place in the society. Mysteries, small or big, interest people, and so mysteries are news. Events that affect people's lives are news. The more people affected, the bigger the news is. People learn something new every day through news they get from newspaper or television. They read about things they have heard about and also would like to read about. News affects people and is capable of stirring widespread awareness. News touches the deepest emotion of the people and appeals somehow to everyone. Thus, news affects the government as well as the common people. Important messages and decisions of the government are conveyed to the people through the medium of news. News broadcasts carry important statements by persons in authority to the people. Conflicts between man to man and also between man to environment are carried out as news. These affect us in one way or other. Natural phenomena like violence, calamities, and disasters make us aware of the present situations and keep a check on growing violence in our society. New trends, events, and ideas are the focus of soft news and thus grasp the imagination of people in the society. This further brings about change and progress for the country. News focus on the economic, political, and cultural aspect of a nation, and people throughout the world learn about other nations through news only. News forms an image of a nation to the outside world. Journalists may predict that something will happen, thus forming a mental image of an event and thus increase the curiosity of the audience, making the news more and more relevant. Reference to persons in news makes them more popular and famous. Elite personalities crave to remain in news to keep up with their image through negative publicity too. These days is seen as a medium of becoming famous. Stories and pictures with the capacity to entertain or amuse an audience is always the main function of news. Entertainment through news is done by carrying stories relating to showbiz, drama, and humorous treatment by use of photographs or witty hats. Qualities of news. The qualities of news refer to the standards and characteristics that distinguish reliable and credible news from misinformation or biased content. Accuracy. News should be based on facts and supported by reliable source. It should strive for accuracy in reporting, ensuring that information presented is correct and verified to the best of the journalist's ability. Journalists should verify information from multiple sources and cross-check facts before publishing. Objectivity and fairness. News should aim to present information in an impartial and balanced manner. Journalists should avoid people bias or subjective opinions when reporting news. They should provide multiple perspectives and give all relevant parties an opportunity to express their views. Objectivity does not mean presenting all. Relevance and timeliness. News should be timely and relevant to the audience it serves. It should cover current events and issues that are of public interest. Timeliness ensures that news is presented when it is most relevant and impactful. Transparency and accountability. News organizations should be transparent about their sources, methods, and potential conflicts of interest. They should provide clear attribution from information and clearly distinguish between reporting, analysis, and opinion pieces. Corrections and retractions should be promptly issued if errors are discovered. Context and depth. News should provide context to help readers understand the broader significance of events and issues. It should go beyond the surface level facts and explore underlying causes, historical background, and potential implications. In-depth reporting helps provide a more comprehensive understanding of complex topics. Ethical standards. News should adhere to ethical guidelines such as respecting privacy, avoiding harm, and ensuring the dignity of individuals involved. Journalists should uphold professional integrity and avoid conflict of interest that could compromise the accuracy and fairness of their reporting. Accountability to the public. News organizations have a responsibility to serve the public interest. They should be responsive to feedback and concerns from the audience. Corrections should be issued when mistakes are made and channels for audience engagement should be provided. Nature of news. The nature of news refers to its characteristics and inherent qualities. There are some key aspects that define the nature of news. Timeliness. News is the time sensitive and focuses on recent events and developments. It aims to provide up-to-date information on what is happening in the world. Timeliness of news helps ensure its relevance and impact. Newsworthiness. News is selected based on its newsworthiness, which is determined by factors such as significance, impact, proximity, novelty, conflict, and human interest. Events or issues that have a direct impact on people's lives involve prominent individuals or organizations or are unusual or unexpected tend to be considered more newsworthy. Objectivity and impartiality. News strives to present information objectively without personal bias or opinion. While complete objectivity may be challenging to achieve, journalists aim to provide a balanced and impartial account of events, presenting multiple perspectives and allowing readers to form their own opinions. Informative and educational. News serves an informational purpose, providing readers with facts, analysis, and insights on various topics. It helps readers understand complex issues, learn about different culture and societies and gain knowledge about the world. Public interest. News focuses on topics and events that are of public interest and relevance. It covers issues that impact society, politics, the economy, health, the environment, and other areas that affect people's lives. News serves the public by informing and empowering individuals to make informed decisions and engage in public discourse. Accountability and transparency. News plays a crucial role in holding individuals, organizations, and governments accountable for their actions. It promotes transparency by exposing corruption, misconduct, and abuse of power. Though through investigative journalism, news helps ensure that those in positions of authority are held accountable. Evolving and adaptive. The nature of news is dynamic and constantly evolving. It adapts to changes in technology, communication platforms, and audience preferences. News organizations continually innovate to deliver news through various mediums such as print, broadcast, online, and social media to reach a diverse audience. Influence and impact. News has the potential to shape public opinion, influence policy decisions, and bring about social change. It can raise awareness about important issues, spark public debate, and mobilize collective actions. The nature of news acknowledges its influence on individuals, communities, and society as a whole. Understanding the nature of news helps consumers critically evaluate the information they encounter and discern reliable sources from misinformation or propaganda. It also guides journalists in producing responsible and impactful news content that serves the public interest. Evaluating news sense, and news values. News sense refers to the ability to recognize and determine what information is newsworthy and how it should be presented to the audience. It is a combination of skills, experience, and intuition that journalists develop over time. News sense involves several key elements. Newsworthiness. It entails the ability to identify events, issues, or stories that are of public interest and significance. Journalists with news sense can distinguish between trivial information and stories that have impact, relevance to the audience. Relevance in time. News sense helps journalists recognize the importance of timely reporting. It involves understanding of value of breaking news, exclusive stories, and events that have just occurred or are on audience perspective. Journalists with news sense consider the interest, needs, and preference of their audience. They understand the demographics and characteristics of their target audience and tailor their reporting to effectively engage and inform them. Accuracy and verification. News sense involves a commitment to accuracy and fact checking. Journalists with strong news sense are diligent in verifying information from multiple sources before publishing or broadcasting it to ensure that it is reliable and trustworthy. Impact and consequence. News sense helps journalists assess the potential impact and consequences of a story. They consider how the information may affect individuals, communities, and society as a whole, helping them prioritize and allocate resources accordingly. News values refer to the criteria or factors that influence the selection and presentation of news stories. They help journalists, and news organizations determine which stories are considered newsworthy and deserving of coverage. While news values may vary across different cultures and contexts, there are several commonly recognized news values. Here are some key news values. Impact. Stories that have a significant impact on individual, communities, or society as a whole are considered newsworthy. This can include events such as natural disasters, political decisions, or social issues that affect a large number of people. Timeliness. News that is recent or unfolding in real time tend to be prioritized. Journalists aim to report on current events to keep the audience informed about the latest developments. Proximity. Stories that are geographical or emotionally close to the audience are often considered more newsworthy. Local events or issues that directly impact the community are given priority. Prominence. News stories involving well-known individuals, celebrities, or public figures tend to attract attention. Events or issues connected to prominent people are often considered newsworthy due to their potential influence or public interest. Conflict. News stories that involve conflicts, controversies, or debates tend to garner attention. Conflicting viewpoints, political or social tensions, or controversial events often make a headline. Human interest. Stories that evoke emotions, touch upon human experiences, or have a personal angle often attract readers or viewers. These stories focus on individuals or groups and their unique, inspiring, or relatable experience. Novelty. Unusual or rare events, discovery, or situation often capture attention. Stories that deviate from the norm, break records, or introduce something new tend to be deemed newsworthy. Currency. News stories that align with current trends, popular topics, or emerging issues often receive attention. Journalists strive to cover subjects that are of contemporary interest or have relevance to ongoing discussions. Relevance. News stories that have a direct relevance to the audience's daily lives, interests, or considered newsworthy. These stories address topics that have a personal impact or provide practical information to the audience. Consequence. News stories that have significant consequences or potential implications for individuals, communities, or society are often given priority. These stories focus on issues that may lead to policy changes, social shifts, or long-term effects. It's important to note that news values are not exhaustive or fixed, and different news organizations may prioritize them differently. Journalists exercise their professional judgment to apply news values while ensuring accuracy, fairness, and ethical considerations in their reporting. Elements of news. The main elements of news are oddity. Strange incidents are news. News stories with elements of surprise will create curiosity and will be in news. This is where the man bites dog stories come in along, with other surprising, shocking, or unusual events. Emotion. How do people feel about it? These news stories will be both bad news and good news. Death, tragedy is example of bad news. Positive news stories are far more prevalent than is suggested by the cynical claim that only good news What is the effect on the reader? News stories about issues, groups, and nations are perceived to be of relevance to the audience. Proximity. Where is the story from? What happens in and around your city interests you more than what happened in a far-flung region. Therefore, newspaper allocate greater space for local news because of the proximity factor. Drama. Dramatic events of any kind would be an ideal subject for an interesting news story. Human interest. People doing interesting things or incidents having an emotional element. These kind of stories cover all the feelings that human beings have, including sympathy, happiness, sadness, anger, ambition, love, hate, etc. News stories concerning entertainment, showbiz, drama, humorous treatment, witty headlines, entertaining photograph will be of interest to most of the people. Prominence. Famous people make news. Virtually every action of famous people is considered to be newsworthy. Stories concerning the elite, powerful individuals, organizations of institutions are enough to create a news story. Celebrities are always a subject for news and their every action is under the observation of the media. Progress, technological advance, and new discoveries will always be the subject for discussion and a readable news story. Conflicts, man versus nature, man versus machine, man versus himself. Conflict has an element of drama that gets attention and hence serves as a criterion for news selection. Timeliness. It's new, so will be in news. Timeliness is the essence of news and is understandably a criterion for news selection. An event that has just happened makes a good news story, while events happened a few days ago are history. Out of the innumerable events taking place around us, journalists decide what few events are worth reporting. Deciding what is newsworthy is not an exact science. Newsworthiness is often decided on the basis of news values. News values are not static. The news values undergo changes with changing times. Generally, news values are influenced by trade practices, changing technology, editorial policy, economics. Trade practices. Everyone learns by experience. Journalists also learn by doing, and one generation of journalists pass on their learning to the next generation. The new entrants in the trade of journalism learn journalistic practices from seniors. In this process, precedent also frame the practices. A guideline to include or exclude a particular news item becomes a precedent, and next time a similar story comes it is treated based upon the past practice. Changing technology. Technology also decides to formulate the news values. Fashion shows became news mainly because they could be shown on television. A news item with a photograph is more likely to be selected, and digital transmission has made it possible to send the pictures easily and without loss of time or quality. Similarly, a news item with good soundbite will stand better chances for being included in the radio news bulletin. Editorial policies. Owners and media persons holding senior posts in news organizations also influence the news values. In pre independent India, the news values for an owner or editor committed to the movement for the freedom of the country would have been different from an owner or media person who believed in the continuation of the British Empire in India. Even today, The news values for foreign news channels would be different from those of Doordarshan. Economics. Gradually, economics is becoming more and more important in influencing the news values of news organizations. Advertising is the life and blood of news organization, and it becomes difficult to carry news contrary to the interest of advertisers. Example: when an organization found that some brands of aerated cold drinks bottled in India contain harmful chemicals far beyond the tolerable limits and much more than those bottled in Europe and US, one of the leading English newspapers carried the major story on page 3 and explanation of the manufacturers on page 1. Everyone knows that a major portion of the revenue for the media comes from the ads of cold drinks. Major news values. The news values keep changing with changing practices. Nonetheless, most academicians and newspersons agree that there are common elements that characterize the newsworthiness. Accordingly, six main news values have been identified. These are timeliness, proximity, conflict, eminence and prominence, consequence and impact, human interest. Timeliness. Essential elements of news is the freshness of the information. News is the new information. Old information, though, may be reported, but very rarely so. This is perhaps because of the people's interest in the latest. Old becomes stale and inconsumable. In a morning newspaper, readers want yesterday's news only. In the evening newspaper, even yesterday's information is not news. But the readers expect reports of whatever important has happened since morning. On television, everyone wants the latest, which is right now, current or instantaneous. Information is the need of the hour. It is also said that the news is a perishable commodity. That is, old news is new news. Similarly, it is also said that the shelf life of a newspaper is only few hours long. With passage of time, news becomes stale or outdated. News often loses its relevance when it becomes old. Example: if it snows in Shimla today, it must be reported in electronic media today only and in the newspaper tomorrow. If it is reported day after tomorrow, it is no news. The national address given by the President of India on the Republic Day has to be reported in the first edition of the newspaper after ceremony. Proximity. Human beings take interest in the happenings close by. Readers and viewers wish to learn more about their own villages, towns, states, and countries. All other things are all other things being equal. News from close to home is more important than news from far away. But it must be noted that the proximity is not only in terms of physical distance. Proximity may be social as well as psychological. Following examples will illustrate. Examples: elections of local municipal committee are important for the people of the town, district and state in the decreasing order. But this information is of very little importance to the people of another town, hundreds of kilometers away. Same information about the elections of the municipal committee becomes newsworthy for those people who belong to that area but are present working hundreds of kilometers away. This is because of the social and psychological proximity. A cricket match series in which India is also playing is of lot of news value to cricket lovers in India, though the match is being played in Australia. Psychological affiliations overcome the physical distance. Conflict. Conflict is an essential element of the human social system. There are internal conflicts within us. There are interpersonal conflicts and group conflicts. When a conflict gets manifested in an unusual manner, it becomes newsworthy. In fact, conflict reporting is in abundance these days. There are suggestions that conflict reporting is harmful to the society as it increases the negativity and must be reduced. Example, because of the repeated failure of crops, a farmer is not able to manage his finances and in desperation commits suicide. This becomes a news. A series of suicide by farmers makes even a bigger news. Clash of interest between two leaders of a political party leads to its split and news is created. Social tension between two castes or sectors lead to communal or ethnic violence and becomes news to be reported. Prominence and eminence. Famous persons in the society make news. Their ordinary utterances and normal activities also make news. The prominent persons may be politicians, businessmen, academicians, administrators, scientists, social activists, actors and performers, achievers, criminals, etc. It is not only what eminent persons say or do that makes news, but many a times what they do not say or do not makes better news. Example, when the Prime Minister says publicly always is newsworthy. Whatever Amitabh Bachchan says or does publicly or otherwise often always becomes news. Activities of an underworld don illegally involved in smuggling are reported extensively in the news media. Absence of the Prime Minister in the Lok Sabha when all important bill is being introduced becomes news. Consequence and impact. Every human being is interested in any information that is going to be consequence to him or her. Such information is likely to impact people's lives now or later and hence is of great value. Two factors are important here. One, the degree of impact, and second, the number of persons to be affected. More the intensity of the impact and larger the number of persons involved, greater is newsworthiness. Examples, increase or decrease in the income tax rates is news because it is going to strongly affect a very large number of people. Increase or decrease of the price of diesel and petrol by a few paise becomes news although its degree of impact is small, but the number of affected persons is very large. Declining the plea for mercy by the president of a person sentenced to death has also becomes a news because of the intensity of information, although the number of affected persons is small. Human interest. Important persons and important events are not the only news items that appear in the news media. Stories that arouse human emotions also make news, and such stories are much appreciated. The number of human interest stories is gradually increasing in all the news media as they relate to the ordinary people. Example, descriptive account of how a rag picker girl graduated with distinction will be read and viewed by the audience with great interest. A mother caught in the sea waves struggles to save her two infant children. Finding it difficult to save both of them, she abandons the elder child and later finds her saved by an unknown person. This incident found prominent place in all the media all over the world. Information about a former Olympic hockey player now selling tea on a railway platform also arouses the human emotions and is worth reporting in the media. Additional news value.
The six news values discussed above are the major contributors to the newsworthiness of any information. There are other factors that may also influence news. These are news fall, audience, influence, convenience. News fall. This refers to the total information available in the newsroom while producing a newspaper or a news bulletin. There are occasions when the news items are available in abundance and many stories, which are otherwise very important, have to be left out. But there are also occasions when the news fall is scanty and the editorial staff finds it difficult to fill the space or time. On such occasions, news values are often diluted. This is also applicable on reporting levels. Many things happening simultaneously may force the reporters to choose and pick. At the same time, there are days when the reporters find it difficult to find newsworthy stories, and there is constant pressure from the newsroom for stories. There are cases when, on such occasions, the reporters have created fictitious stories also. Through audience, through journalism is an important form of communication for the masses. Every news organization has a specific audience. Audiences are generally determined by language, reach, and preferences. Most of the news channels started telecasting news in English but later found that this language has limited reach. So they also started telecasting in Hindi and other Indian languages. The parameters for news selection and presentation also changed accordingly. The Pioneer is considered to be the paper meant for intellectuals and its content is tuned accordingly. The Tribune caters to the news needs of Punjab, Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, Jammu and Kashmir, and Delhi. On the other hand, the Deccan Herald serves the need of English reading population of some states in South India. News production meant for farmers will carry news according to the preferences of farmers. Times of India have a stated policy of reaching those persons who have higher purchasing power and hence the news is tuned to their preferences. Influences. Influence of the audience is mostly not direct and rarely measured, but with the realization that news coverage has a major role in shaping the opinions and attitudes of the people, external direct influence on the news media have increased. Release or stoppage of advertising is the most potent influence exerted not only by the government but also by political parties, business and industry, and even social organizations. Terrorists and insurgents create influence by the threat of physical violence. News media in Punjab, Jammu and Kashmir, and the Northeast are full of such examples. Though the news persons are trained to be objective, fair, and just, external influences do have a role to play in deciding which information is to be treated as news. Convenience. Collection of reliable information and verifying and validating the information collected is a very tedious process, but this is said to be the basic need for news writing. In such a situation, it would be natural that there would be preference for performing journalistic jobs with minimum effort. In this process, some important newsworthy events remain uncovered or their coverage is incomplete. But more worrying development is the exploitation of this tendency by certain organized systems, particularly the public relation department of the state and private bodies. A ready-to-use news release is provided to the journalist and the publicity purpose gets served at the cost of relevant and important information. Good news organizations are aware of this development and have started asking their media persons to reduce their dependence on ready to use material. Dynamics of news values. It should be clear from the above discussion that the factors that contribute to news values are not very precise. Deciding what is newsworthy is it should be clear. Deciding what is newsworthy is not an exact science. We can also say that the concept of news itself is not a fixed concept. In fact, the concept of news and the news values change with time and also with the change of place. News values also change with the changes in the social structures and functions. We can say that the concept of news and news values is a dynamic concept. Dynamism of news values is a welcome and positive attribute. If a concept or dogma remains static and does not change with times, then often it becomes irrelevant or useless. Sometimes it may even become a subject of ridicule. Dynamism is in news values also keeps the new media relevant to the people. The media organizations that do not change or refuse to accept the news values of the society become unacceptable and perish. The main inspiration of the dynamism of the news values is the dynamism of the social system. We know that the society is always in a state of dynamic equilibrium. It means that the society is always changing, but the change itself creates a status of stability. The social values also change. When the social beliefs, values, and preferences change, the news values are bound to change. The other contributing factor for the dynamism is the change in the clientele of the news. Like any other product, the news media also is always in the process of expansion and extension. A leading newspaper of Madhya Pradesh decided to expand its activities in Rajasthan. With a significant readership in Rajasthan, the news coverage also changed. Though it published a separate edition for Rajasthan, yet in the minds of news selectors, it was now not Madhya Pradesh alone. The same newspaper is today spread in almost entire Hindi belt of the country. Earlier, its news policy was state or region oriented. Today, it is more nation oriented. Yet, another reason for the dynamism of news values is the economics of the news production. When the news organization faces financial crisis, it spends less on news collection. In a situation of good financial health, media organizations explore new areas, create new infrastructure, and provide better tools for news collection. The role of advertising, which is also a major economic factor, is also very important. Examples. In the later part of the 18th century, when journalism began in India, religious preaching and social reform dominated the news value. In the first half of the 20th century, patriotism and ills of the foreign rule determined the worth of news. After independence, nation building and watchdog functions became the guiding principles. Today, for a majority of the media, consumerism and modern lifestyles are the Major news values. Enforcement Directorate was investigating the business deals of an industrial house that also owns a chain of national newspapers. The newspaper did not carry the news of the investigation. Instead, it carried stories against the investigating agencies. Other newspapers, especially the one in direct competition, published the story of investigation with prominence. During elections, contesting parties and candidates give advertisements to the newspapers with a condition that additional matter given by them will also be carried as news. That's all for today. We'll discuss about hard news and soft news in the next session. Thank you very much.